Thank you, Christina. Everybody. I want to begin with gratitude, not only to Christina for standing in so beautifully for Meredith and making this a poetry space before I even stood up, but also to Meredith in absentia for all the care she puts into creating an environment that makes us fellows feel almost as special every day as her introductions make us feel on the day that we present. To everyone at Radcliffe, in the Dean's office, at the Schlesinger, in academic ventures, the tech folks here at Knopfel, the faculty directors, especially Hisa and Jennifer, and of course the glorious team of people based in Byerly Hall, Rebecca, Sharon, Carolyn, Meg, Margarita, I could keep going on, Jess, all of whom managed to simultaneously make 50 fellows' lives much more worry-free, stimulating, nutritious, and generative than I thought possible. I'm also deeply grateful and indebted to my research partner, David Zhang, who I think will be able to come in after he gets out of class, who never failed to leap above my highest expectations. Oh, there he is. Who never failed to leap above my highest expectations in digging up arcane or seemingly random information, offering insightful readings of poems, and not least designing PowerPoint slides. Many, many thanks to my brilliant and talented fellows for teaching me something new and usually mind-blowing about the world at least twice a week for the past 7 months. I'm really so glad to know you all. And finally, all my love to my partner, Stefan Robelin, for being here with me today, as he has been on virtually all the best days of my life for the past 19 years. So my primary project this year has been a long narrative poem, part epic, part speculative fiction, and part exploration of what else I might make with poetry. This piece began with the emergence of a voice that wasn't mine, in the sense that I wasn't the person speaking, but also in that I sort of felt like it didn't sound like Evie Shockley poetry, whatever that might mean. I initially thought the voice prophetic, but soon discovered that it was a history I was channeling, the history of our future, in which the Earth had come to the brink of an environmental apocalypse. We didn't meet our fate, however, because we were rescued. The story my poem tells is not how we so nearly destroyed the planet. I think we already know that story. But rather how we struggle in the aftermath of the near miss with what was necessary to avoid the catastrophe and how to move forward in a different direction than we had been headed. So I am going to read a short selection from that work, which I call Rescue, a little later on. But I decided, given that I think of this as a fairly mixed audience, poetry people who know my work, but also physicists, you know, and everything in between. Physicists have their own art. I totally recognize that now, especially. But I decided the best way to approach this was to invite you, in fact, on a journey with me from some of my earliest poems through some of the most recent. As I've continued to work on Rescue, I've come to understand that while it didn't sound to me necessarily like Evie Shockley poetry when I began, it is actually much more connected to my previous body of work than I had originally believed. And so these poems that I will share are selected from among the many that now seem to be precursors of this project in one way or another. Some exemplify my previous engagements with narrative, though I'm not really thought of as a narrative poet. Some reveal my longstanding interest in other worlds, which is to say the otherworldliness of this world. And nearly all of these poems tackle the many individual acts and social structures, the outrages, absurdities, and violences that feed into the motivating question of rescue. What does it mean to be human? So I will start with a couple of poems from my first full-length book. I'm not going to do as much introduction of these poems as I sometimes do, but I think what I would want you to know about this one, it's called London Bridge, and I think of it as a meditation on migration, voluntary and involuntary. And I think of it also as one of my earlier efforts to try to think about something at almost, not quite, but almost a global level. London Bridge. Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Entering the cathedral, I hear these re-moving words echoing off the tear-stained glass windows. People from 100 nations, wet with London rain, dripping from their hair and umbrellas, pooling into puddles, the spit of 50 foreign tongues, visaed by Christ. The choir mouths open, a blues estuary, stems the vernacular tide, denegros denotes, refrains from a spiritual funk, imports my past, refines the raw product, the no of my yesterday. Onyx pearls lost overboard, what the hell could not hold, so many in the same boat. Othello came to England during Elizabeth's reign, moored to the stage, the noblest of savages. He entertained the idea of Robeson, St. Paul's Immaculate Reception. The Thames, not an old man to sing home about, but on its shores, the solid opulence of the Anglican Church, a veritable vault of safety from enemy bombs, starvation, sale, excommunication, the greatest threat, not to be refused the shelter of its thick stone walls. Just swallow this wafer of state and be swallowed. Open your heart to the God of Gladstone, Disraeli, and Churchill. Must Jesus bear this cross alone? Devil on the deep blue sea. Just one more bon voyage across the Atlantic, the Pacific. The world awaits. You'd not have thought death had unhomed so many. The thing about my poems, I was reminded to let you all know, is that they're like hard and funny at the same time. So it'll help me know that you got the jokes if you laugh. But if it makes you feel uncomfortable to laugh at things that are not funny, then just sit in that that discomfort. Just kidding. So this next poem is called elocation, which is a word I made up because poets get to make up words. The sort of parenthetical subtitle is "Or Exit Us." And I think of this as a meditation on displacement on a more local level, thinking about the history of how the interstate highways and so many other things that disrupted American cities disrupted some more than others. Elocation, or exit us. The city is American, so she can map it. Train tracks, highways, slice through, bleed only to one side. Like a half-Red Sea, permanently parted, the middle she'd pass through like the rest in a wheeling rush, afraid the divide would not hold and all would drown, city as almighty ambush beneath the crashing waves of human hell. The city's infrared structure sweats her, a land escape she can't make, though she knows the way. She's got great heart, but that gets her where? Egypt's always to her right. It goes where she goes. Canaan's always just ahead, and to her left, land of the bloodless dead. So, move forward to my second collection, The New Black. It opens with a poem that is an extended metaphor. I should say that this collection as a whole was very much engaged with history, how we tell it, how it doesn't go away. This is a poem that's an extended metaphor for a particular history. My life as China. I was imported. I was soft in the hills where they found me, shining in a private dark. I absorbed fire and became fact. I was fragile. I incorporated burnt cattle bones, powdered remains, ashes to ashes. I was baptized in heat, fed on destruction. I was not destroyer, was not destroyed. I vitrified. None of me was the same. I was many. How can I say this? I was domesticated, trusted, treasured. I was translucent, but not clear. Put me to your lips. I will not give. I will give you what you have given me. And it was a great honor and delight on many levels when a friend of a friend reached out to me, a musician and composer named Jeff Tang, to ask if he could use this poem as lyrics in a song that he was composing as part of a larger work called Such Strange Gravity, Songs of Gotham, about New York City. And I also had the delight of attending a workshop performance of the piece in Brooklyn last summer. And I thought it would be fun just to share that with you all. So this is how the poem becomes part of another story.
December 13th, 1711.
From the minutes of the Common Council of the City of New York.
A law appointing a place for the more convenient hiring of slaves.
Be it ordained by the Mayor, Recorder, Alderman of New York City that all Negro and Indian slaves that are let out to hire within this city
Take up their standing in order to be hired at the market house at the Wall Street slip, whereby all persons may know where to hire slaves, as their occasions shall require, and also masters discover when their slaves are so hired.
and all the inhabitants of the city are to take notice hereof accordingly.
Put me to your lips, put me to your lips. Put me to your lips, put me to your lips.
Put me to your lips.
I was fragile. Put me to your lips, put me to your lips. Put me
to your lips.
Put me to your lips, put me to your lips. I will not give. I was imported. I was soft in the hills where they found me. Soft in the hills where they found me. Shining in a private dark. Shining in a private dark. I absorbed fire and became fact. I absorbed fire and became fact. I was fragile. I was fragile.
I was fragile.
I incorporated burnt
Cattle, bones, powdered remains.
ashes to ashes. I was
Baptized in heat.
I was burned. I fed on destruction. I was not destroyer. Was not destroyed. I vitrified. None of me was the same. 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 None of me. How can I say this? 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 How can I say this? I was domesticated, trusted. I was domesticated, treasured. I was domesticated, translucent but not clear. Put me to your lips, 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 put me to your lips. I will not give. Put me to your lips. I will not give. I will not give. I will give you what you have given me.
Those of you who know that I had the pleasure of collaborating with Marta here this year will understand why I want to come back and back and back to the music in poetry and with poetry. So this next poem is one of my explorations of narrative. It's a poem in which I try to think about how old stories can have new resonances. And it's called Never After. The epigraph is from one of my favorite poets, Harriet Mullen. And it reads, "Was she enchanted or drugged?" Never after. Once upon a time, she went to a magical club on Rush Street in Chicago, Illinois. She went with her girl, who went to pick up men, white men. Her girl was a Cinderella, a goddaughter. Wore the right shoes, a red cape with a hood. Her girl knew a prince from a toad, and how to get results, wolf whistles. She went to chaperone. She was the designated driver, especially when she drove home alone. She loved to watch the sun rise over the water as she headed north on Lakeshore Drive. She called her girl the afternoon after to see how it went, to hear what went down, who went down, on whom. Breakfast downtown in some cool cafe. A ride home with the white knight in the morning in his imported European steed. Horsepower. She wasn't jealous. She had a man, a black man. She only wished she was invited to dance more at the club. She wasn't black enough or white enough to catch the white guy's eyes. She didn't look like the type, too. She nursed her amaretto sour till it was mostly melt. She was the designated driver, the chaperone, the colored girl, whose skirt was not short enough or tight enough, too. One night, her man was off from his job, parking steeds, imported European steeds, for tips, for tuition. He could take her out. Where? The magical club downtown on Rush Street, of course. She would not be a chaperone. She would be a princess. She would dance and dance with her man. She would get down on the floor. At the door, there was a problem. Out-of-state IDs. Her ID was from the same state it always had been. She was from out of state. Her girl was from out of state. Her man was from out of state. They were in college. They were seniors. They were legal. She made her case. She stood her ground. She put her foot down on the one, on the two. They got in, paid the price, got their hands stamped. However, there was a P beneath the dance floor. She could not spin the straw into gold. The clock kept striking midnight. She couldn't let down her hair. They knew it spelled trouble, but they decided to have one drink and leave. They had a point to make. Paid the price, drank the drinks. She ordered an amaretto sour. They brought her a stepmother special, a red delicious. They made their point, and she pricked her finger on it. She began to fall down. She could hardly stand. Charming. Her man's kiss did not revive her, make it go away. He carried her off into the set sun, off the set, up. She slept it off. They shrugged it off. They learned what they already knew. They knew better. They lived to tell the the scary tale. And this poem, it's the last one I'll read from The New Black, is another engagement with history and the trickiness of history. It's sort of past and present overlapping one another. I wrote it when my nieces were born, which was 12 years ago now. I was thinking about differences in the way race seemed to me as compared to how it seemed to my mother, who grew up under Jim Crow, as also compared to how it seemed to my students, college students at that time. And I couldn't even imagine what my nieces might make of it. And so this poem was coming out of those thoughts, as well as thinking about hearing my mother sing to my nieces some of the songs that she had sung to my sister and me when we were young. It's called Duck, Duck, Redux, and there are 2 epigraphs. Those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it, George Santayana. Those who cannot forget the past are destined to remix it. That's me. Duck, duck, redux. This is the way we wash our face, wash our face, wash our face. This is the way we wash our face so early in the morning. This is the way we segregate our schools in 1896. This is the way we segregate our schools in 2007. Mary had a little lamb, a bad, bad black sheep with 3 bags full of wool. It followed her to school one day, work one day, Wimbledon one day. It followed her to church one day, which was against the rule. This is the way we patrol the roads in the antebellum South. This is the way we patrol the streets in our shiny New York. Cue wedding bell. Oh, bring back my Shawnee to me. This is the way we appropriate Black culture in the post-Reconstruction era. This is the way we appropriate Black culture in the 21st century. This little piggy went to market, got mad bling for spitting whack rhymes and calling women hoes, and still wound up crying, we, all the way home. This is the way we use a noose in Jim Crow America. This is the way we use a noose in Gina, Louisiana. Little blues boy, come blow your horn. I'm sorry to tell you, but his horn's done gone. And as for the boy who used to blow so sweet, he's under a mountain of debt, working for minimum wage. This is the way we wash our hands of you historically. Throw you into the Atlantic, spray you with Birmingham hoses. This is the way we wash our hands of you today, with jerry-rigged levees, so early, so early in the millennium. So, we move. Semi-automatic is a collection in which I started trying to think about, as hard as I could, all the connections between the kinds of violences that we are living through. And this poem, which is is the second poem in the collection, tries as hard as any of them. It's called Whether or Not, and that's W-E-A. Whether or not. Time was on its side. It's upside down. It was a new error. Generation Why Not had voted its conscience, and a climate of indifference was generating maelstrom-y weather. We acted as if the planet was a stone-cold player, but turns out Earth had a heart, and it was melting. Pacific Islanders first into the hotter water. Just a coincidence, the polar bears are white, and their real estate was being liquidated too. Meanwhile, in the temper zone, the birds were back, and I hadn't slept. Had it been a night or a season? The bird song sounded cheap, my thoughts cheaper, penny, inky, dark. Language struck me as wooden, battered. The words became weeds, meaning I couldn't see any use for them. I had signed my name repeatedly without any sign of change. I was still bleeding from yesterday's sound bites, and the coming elections were breeding candid hates by the hand over fistful. There'd been an Arab Spring, but it was winter all summer in America. One of the great pleasures of moving around to different artist colonies, especially the ones where they are more interdisciplinary, like here, is meeting people who you admire. One of the people I met at the Vermont Studio Center when I was there is Alison Saar, whose art I had been admiring for a long time. Some of you may also know her mother's art, Betty Saar. She is in a family of artists. And while I was thrilled to be able to connect with her and let her know how much I loved her work, she, at the end of our, was it week or 2 weeks there, gave me a copy of this drawing. This is the etching, Girl with a Pearl Earring. This drawing was still in my head, of course, when I started writing poems in semi-automatic about the figure Topsy, a young girl who appears in Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. She's meant as a foil for little Eva, think Shirley Temple. Topsy, by comparison, has hair that goes in all directions, says things like, it's wicked, and doesn't know who made her or where she came from in terms of religious training, right? I decided I needed to rescue Topsy from Harriet Beecher Stowe. And I created several poems that end up in a section called the Topsy Suite. This poem I'm going to read, though, has Topsy not only come out of Stowe, but leap all the way into the world that we might be familiar with under the title Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, also through the looking glass. You may not know, there's also a book called Topsy's Adventures in Wonderland. And what I will read now are a few excerpts from a poem which is comprised of excerpts from that book. I was thrilled because Allison agreed to illuminate this poem for me, so I'll show you some of those images as we move. From Topsy in Wonderland. "What are you?" said the captain of industry. This was not an encouraging opening for a conversation. Topsy replied gaily, "I hardly know, sir, presently. I knowed who I was when I got up on my own continent this morning." But looks around the Planta station and the rest of the United States. "I must have been changed several times since then." "Yours wasn't a really good school," said the mocking person. "I took the different branches of arithmetic: ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision." "I never did hear of uglification," Topsy ventured to say. "What'd that be?" "Never heard of uglifying," he exclaimed. "You know what to beautify is, I suppose." "Yes," said Topsy doubtfully. "It means to make something whiter." "Well, then," the mocking person went on, "if you don't know what to uglify is, you are a savage." "I should experience freedom far better," Topsy said to herself, "if I could get to the mountaintop. And here's a path that leads directly to it. At least, no, it doesn't do that after going a few yards along the path and turning several sharp corners, but I suppose it will get me free at last. But how curiously it twists. It's more like gerrymandering than meandering. Well, this turn goes to the mountaintop, I suppose. No, it doesn't. This goes directly back to the big house. Well, then I'll try another way." And so she did, wandering up and down and trying tactic after tactic, but always coming back to the big house, do what she would. Indeed, once when Topsy turned a corner rather more quickly than usual, she ran against it before she could stop herself. "I'm not going in again. I know I should have to go back through the looking glass, back into the old box, and there'd be an end of all my efforts to escape. So, resolutely turning her back upon the big house, Topsy set out once more through the system, determined to keep right on till she got to the mountaintop. For a few years, all went on well, and she was just saying, I really shall do it this time, when the path gave a sudden twist, the system shook itself, and the next moment she found herself actually walking in through the big house door. Oh, fuck the bullshit, Topsy cried. I never saw such a house for getting in the way. Never. However, there was the mountaintop in full sight. So there was nothing to be done but start again. Is I addressing the missus? Topsy began. Well, yes, if you call that addressing, the mistress said. It isn't my notion of the thing at all. I've been addressing myself for the last 2 hours. It would have been all the better, it seemed to Topsy, if she had got someone else to dress her. She was so dreadfully untidy and crooked. Missus, you really seems to need a maid. I'm sure I'll take you with pleasure, the mistress said. 200 hours a week and freedom every other day. Topsy laughed nervously. I don't want you to take me. I want my freedom today. You can't have it just because you want it, the mistress said. The rule is freedom tomorrow and freedom yesterday, but never freedom today. Topsy objected. It got to come sometime to freedom now. So I think with that, thank you. I think with that I want to, switch and read at least one poem, maybe two, from the Art for Justice project, my portfolio that I'm calling Prison Prism. There are 2 epigraphs to this poem. It's called Jury Duty. Such a loved thing. The first epigraph is from Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. She writes, almost no one ever goes to trial. Nearly all criminal cases, 97%, are resolved through plea bargaining. And that comes to mind as a thing we should think about when we use the word criminal to talk about the people who are behind bars. Let us go and make our visit. That's from T.S. Eliot. Jury duty. No one wants to be there. Many of us glitter like the sea in sunshine, shedding sweat or tears at the mere thought of a criminal court. Such proximity to police, to cuffs and charges, to be trapped playing a role in some tragedy, condemner uncomfortably close to the condemned. Many others think instantly of opportunity costs. Time is money. Who can afford to spend 3 to 5 days' worth listening to the lawyers coming and going through the oceans of files, talking of boys who were no angels? No. To serve is a right and our duty, each to each. But the potential juror peers into the courtroom as if it were quarantined for the plague. Once, years ago, my father served in a trial. A stormy evening, the darkness intensified by winds that made our metal screen door buzz like a warped harmonica. As we waited dinner for him, the power failed. My sister and I, young and younger, shrieked until our mom lit the fat candle, its plastic container painted to look like stained glass. As we sat distracted by flickering scenes of Jesus' miracles, the phone rang. Our father's one call to tell our mother the jury would be sequestered overnight in courthouse cells. Daddy's in jail, was all we girls took in. Our lives had been a steady caravan of cautions and counsels, inevitably ending, and stay out of prison. We hardly dared imagine that anyone once caught behind bars emerged again. The next day brought morning sun and father in the afternoon. We greeted him as if he'd come from the dead. Would it be a hardship to serve 3 weeks? Dutiful jurors in my state are asked. The line to plead excuses runs long. Meanwhile, money, or lack thereof, is time for all the men and women awaiting trial in cells they can't bail themselves out of. They hear the prosecutors spooning out their lives, inviting the accused, "Sing to me." They sing, a loud chorus of bodies, white and brown and black, flooding prisons in waves, while we malinger on the beach in our own sequestered chambers. Their human voices wake us, or we drown. I think I'll read one more of these, and then I'm going to give you a little chunk of rescue. This one is called 1 in 3, and it's a statistic. The room rang, cavernous and noisy, even with most of the long wood plank tables emptying. I'd snagged a seat at the granite top bar and placed my order, pizza margarita, a mere minute before the kitchen closed. The bartender served red wine in a simple juice glass, unavoidably pretentious in a space so thick with gentrification pricing and decor. Later, after my plate was cleared, I looked up from the book occupying me while I ate. The seats on either side of me had also cleared, and the guy 2 seats down, who'd been as deeply buried between his headphones as I'd been between my pages, had also surfaced. To my surprise, he asked to see what I was reading. "What's this word?" He pointed at the beginning of Jackie Wong's title, Carceral Capitalism. "It's about incarceration," I offered as a starting point. "I've been in 3 times," he returned. I looked at him as he continued, playing with my glass and the dregs of my wine, puzzling together the dark glow of his skin, his hipster-trimmed mustache and goatee, his polite curiosity about my plain little gray-covered book, and his unacademic understanding of the subject I was studying. If I was once again surprised, it wasn't because I didn't have the facts. Turning my bar stool fully toward him, I tried threading the needle whose eye was circumscribed by my desires, to show I knew the lowdown, but not downplay the impact of his words. What is the proper response to hearing a man tell you about the pervasive racism of guards, of one whose bicep bore a tat of a black baby with a noose around its neck? To hearing him say that prison don't do nothing but make you worse? I'd read it all before. Was his witness backing up the books, or were the books testifying to his life? I listened, shaking my head and nodding along with his almost casual account of insights so impossible to accept or deny. I know, odds are, every 3rd black guy I meet has been slammed by a system as criminal as anyone it claims the right to prosecute. I know it. Still, my repeated, really, really, in soft but steady counterpoint to his impromptu rift, was an amen, so it be, attesting to the evening's unpredicted revelation, the printed statistic transmuted into body and blood. So rescue. I'm going to read to you from the very beginning. I'll skip around a little bit within this first 2 or 3 sections, but I'll skip around a little bit in the first few sections, but you'll be as lost as anyone would be picking this up from the beginning. So it comes from the Chronicles of the First Years. "We have not a moment to lose," they said, in the whores and loodles of their language, which frightened us as much as the wet breath of a hurricane at first. They are smaller, each the size of a cat, and as agile, but before we ever felt superior, they spoke together, a million sounders sounding the same notes, less identical than leagued, and in league with the voices of the earth. Awed or quickly immobilized, We understood at last that rain is language, the cloudburst a conversation between atmosphere and earth. Drenched in the news of our rescue, we watched them ease our concrete and bricks out of imprisonment, releasing the atoms back to the planet. We learned to believe in the conservation of matter, to celebrate our drifting between states of being, to feel our proteins' kinship with other proteins and the pull of our liquid flesh to other bodies of water. The earth sang in flora we'd forgotten or never met, and we saw the song hummed along to the chorus of leaves unfolding, vibrations the ear picks up from the eye. They wondered how, with so many gods to follow, we'd taught ourselves to worship permanence. We'd misheard everything, we heard them say. Reincarnation juggles the particles of the universe, a kaleidoscope churning up endless possible beauties we be ourselves in, see ourselves in, the whole of creation a series of mirrors, alive and evolving. I will make you fishers of men, he said, they said, so you could see how to be among the fish. Everlasting life, not personal servings of immortality, and a gift we give up if we girdle the earth in mortar, enshroud it in noxious sentences of waste, and bore into its surface like sucking ticks. It wasn't mouths they possessed, so we couldn't call it chewing, but they consumed our durables, roads and bridges, apartment complexes. The living should be easy, they joked, without pausing from their work, as we wondered what they didn't know if they knew Porgy and Bess. Schools, the students are the schools, they pointed out, and we might have known if we'd understood about the fish. And plastic, bottles, jewel cases, earbuds, hampers, tray tables, packaging of all sorts, and every toy Fisher-Price has ever made. They took it all in, our idols to permanence, steadily, diligently, like a great wave of locusts eating their way across a green suburban landscape, leaving it stubbled and shorn. And their impossible bodies unmade these enduring materials, did not break them down, but rather stewed and distilled them into viscous harmlessness, shimmering with energy. We smeared what they expelled over the raw earth exposed in their wake, buried it, ate it, danced it glistening from our arms and hands into the air, and rinsed it into the rivers, lakes, and streams, our job over long, hot months turning cold. In the beginning, we cried for what we were losing. By the time they reclaimed the earth's surface and tore open the first landfill dump, we cried to think how lost we'd been. They saved the oceans for last, sea creatures carrying out effortlessly tasks that we'd slowly learned to do on every continent. The morning the last of the Pacific's plastic islands disappeared into their rosy maws, the ocean seemed to heave and breathe. For days, the sky showered us with the water they'd released, saving, sweet, not flood nor baptism, but hope overflowing our cupped hands. I'm going to skip a section that explains, among other things, that the substance that the rescuers expel when they consume everything, people begin to call source flow. It was many years until we could draw the least source flow out of our own rough bodies. Years on top of the eons we'd wasted before they gave up watching us fumbling the planet like a baby with a rubber ball. The women fought the process least, most being already keenly aware of what indignities and pain could attend the creation of life. Our voracious cells, like numberless rumbling stomachs, wanted to make quick work of consumption, to grab from each mouthful a few fats and nutrients and dispose of the rest. If a meal were a book, we were skimming. We had to retrain our bodies to treat eating like reading poetry, to approach each morsel from more than one angle, to return, revisit, every bit essential, good reason to go slow. Letting go of computers, the internet, will you even know what these words meant? Was like peeling the top layer of skin from our bodies, scalp to soul. We didn't die from it, but the injury was everywhere. We couldn't stop thinking about all the memory we'd lost. Not immobilized, but paralyzed with despair, we watched as casings and keyboards, wirings and plugs eased into the process of unbecoming in our rescuers' wild interiors. You tried to improve your conditions when you should have improved yourselves, they wooed. Chastisement running over our ears in riotous waterfalls of sound. We felt darkness swallowing us, a black bag drawing tight, great folds we couldn't see through. Every good boy does fine, they chanted, leaving us bewildered, boiling fury, until a lilting contralto sang the phrase, pitch perfect, and we remembered what we remembered. We'd been light blind, able to see nothing so much as the tools of sight. You're not ignorant in the dark, they said. It gives you strength, focus, sensitivity, heightens all 6 senses. Our eyes had atrophied our brains. We were about to use some new muscles. Far, far south of us, winter had greeted the rescue straight off with its white teeth. But we, at our latitude, slipped gradually into cold. We huddled together, bedazed in the phantasmic landscapes we now inhabited, by contrast bare, but less and less barren than before, and growing slowly lusher through the summer as source flow reawakened soils, streams. Soon, we slept wrapped in cotton sheets and blankets as deciduous trees burst out in visual song, an aria of autumn. Our rescuers allowed small fires built of wood we scavenged from the forests or the sites where buildings were coming down around us. Big beams, doors, and floorboards would be used in reconstruction, but bits of trim and molding, once stripped of paint, varnish, and stain, blazed safely and well. We heated water for tea and washing, baked source flow in thin ribbons we learned to weave with grasses and yarns to make the thicker, warmer cloth we'd need, along with wool, to keep the coming season's hungry wind from biting into our vulnerable flesh. Not one of us closed our eyes at night without recalling some comfort we'd possessed or hoped to, whether pillow or penthouse. The present past became a warehouse of guilty pleasures, things we had desired, but suicidally, all that was to die for. Our rescuers moved among us, pausing and touching for intimate talk, or gliding by so quickly we couldn't be sure whether we'd felt the downy, lukewarm nap of their texture against our skin. Our original responses to their bodies ranged from fear to antipathy. We'd had to learn to neither shy away from them nor shudder upon contact. The struggle over what to feel toward them eased most. Those evenings, something led them to let loose their fertile music, the cymbal-like chittering rhythms, the notes that bubbled up from low registers to high, full yet fragile, popping open to color sound with tones we heard as grief, ecstasy, doubt, too eerie to be hypnotic, but oddly pulsing enough to soothe. No matter how few of them initiated the patterns, they always picked up volume and intensity in next to no time, as the number of sounders swelled and spread the aural palette in thick strokes against the blue-black tissue of night sky, till earth itself seemed to sing, the stars themselves to answer. Thanks.